Thank you, Monique, for reading the word for us this morning. I want to start with a question this morning. And it's one that requires you to have some familiarity with your family tree. So unless you are a full-blooded Native American, how many generations do you have to count back to get and find your first immigrant ancestor? I'll give you a minute. Let you think about that. I only have to go back 2 on my mother's side. My mother's parents, Frank and Alice Hartley, emigrated from England in the early 1900s, I think right after or in the midst of World War I. My grandfather was educated here in the state of Michigan and ultimately became an elder in the Detroit Conference of the Methodist Church. I've met people along the way who are members of the Mayflower Society, who can literally trace their immigrant roots back to that first Mayflower voyage. That's a critical part of our story as a nation and a people. The vast majority of us are the offspring of immigrants. Somewhere at some time, one or more of our ancestors came to this land and put down roots. Our history tells us that our nation was born of those who were primarily, if not almost exclusively, Christian, at least in the early years, the first 2 centuries perhaps. But it also tells us that each new wave of immigrants coming from other countries were not always treated with dignity and respect, let alone the compassion and love we just heard in our scripture readings. And I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, because there were and still are those who tried or are still trying to square what God says about how to care for immigrants and sojourners and how we actually do so as a nation and even as a church. Typically, and especially as this nation has grown, each new flow of immigrants and refugees was seen as some kind of threat to the livelihood of those of us already here. Though not universally, the immigrants and newcomers were harassed and looked down upon, called nasty names. It often doesn't appear that this Christian nation pays much attention to what God or Jesus have to say about how to treat immigrants, especially in the last decade or 2. When an alien resides with you in your land, you shall, God says, not you might, not maybe, but you shall love the alien as yourself, to basically treat them as a citizen whether they are or not. God says this to the nation of Israel, reminding them that you were aliens in the land of Egypt. And though we weren't aliens in the land of Egypt, we ought remember that most of us are the descendants of immigrants, again, unless we're full-blooded Native Americans. Jesus also had a heart for the outsiders, which is where the title of this series comes from, and for those on the margins, and made clear that blessings come to those who give food and drink to people in need, who make room in their homes for the homeless or the travelers, even giving them clothes and visiting them in home and in prison. I wonder not just how God would judge us as a nation, but as churches and individuals who claim to be seeking to follow and emulate the life of Jesus in our own lives. What would Jesus do to those fleeing, or do for those fleeing terror, war, disease, poverty in order to seek a better life? Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Do the words on the Statue of Liberty still reflect our values as a nation and a people? Or should we just remove them? I wonder sometimes. I can't remember who it was that told me this story not too long ago, but there was a family looking for a home in a new community. And The husband father gave the realtor the long list of amenities and things they were looking for in their home. And then he got to the last item on the list. He said, and I don't want to be in a neighborhood with any colored people. At which point the realtor, without even really thinking about it, said, I'm sorry, you'll have to find another realtor. I don't work like that. And of course, neither should the church, and neither should a nation that claims to be Christian to follow in the footpath of Christ in our dealings with people who are strangers and sojourners and immigrants among us. We remember that we too are the offspring, again, of immigrants, that we too have come to this place, not always by our own choice, but we've had the opportunity given to us. And we barely know the costs that others pay for the privileges we so often take for granted. So when I was outlining today's topic, one of the things that occurred to me is the Church of Jesus Christ really should be advocating not open borders. It ought to be, there ought to be a process, but the demonization of new people coming to our land who often take the jobs Americans don't want to do and who do a lot in service work. We just need to be kinder and gentler and more loving. And the church should be that way. Certainly, every church thinks it's friendly and welcoming and open to all, but for many of the members in too many churches, they're simply friendly with one another and not the visitor, not the newcomer. And so when I was outlining today's topic, it occurred to me, who am I to talk about the experiences of immigrants? I didn't have to make that journey. I didn't have to study. I learned about the Constitution, but not at the level you have to get citizenship if you're an immigrant. I didn't have to apply or pay to become a citizen. But we all know some members of Stevensville United Methodist Church who have been through that journey. Farai and Tendi Rakunda, who graciously agreed to let me record a conversation about their journey, which we did yesterday morning. And so I'm going to end early so that our reflection time can be an opportunity for you to hear their story. Unfortunately, and I'll apologize to Farai and Tendi, it felt like about a 12-minute conversation. It was more like 20. So we had to edit out some of the front-end stuff and get to the heart of the matter, if you will. But I hope you'll find it interesting, because I don't think many in the congregation know that story. And again, I want to give my thanks to Farai and Tendi for sharing what's a very personal story. And so we'll switch to that now. So let's jump forward. I don't know how many in the congregation know this entire journey. I'm sure there's lots of pieces to it. But you shared with me last year when you finally got full citizenship.
Yes.
It had been something you'd kind of put off for a while. And then Tendi, we'll let her tell her story as well. But I'm just curious what that process has been like, how you were treated as a human being throughout the process.
So when we got our green card in 1998, the rule is usually after having a green card for 5 years, you can apply for a green card. So in 2003, we could have applied for a green card, but we didn't. It's expensive, and there was no hurry for us to do that.
Right.
I mean, we were working, we could get access to everything any other citizen might get, except for the voting.
Yeah.
So we stayed without the green card without the citizenship for all those years.
And when you say it's expensive just to get the green card, how much are we talking? Today's dollars.
Yeah, so if you do the paperwork yourself, which is like a 40-page document, it's cumbersome.
Yeah.
If you do it yourself, the registration fees is about $700-800.
Okay.
But since we didn't do it ourselves, we hired lawyers because it's just any small mistake you can do, you can get denied. So it cost about $5,000.
Wow.
And as you can imagine, you know, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So,
Especially when you're young and just starting a career.
exactly.
Right.
Okay,
Exactly.
so I just want the congregation to have
Yep.
some context on.
Yeah.
Well, so you got your green cards in 2003,
To 1998.
1998.
So we stayed all these years, you know, without
Just
applying
as
for,
green card holders.
just as
yeah.
green card
Okay.
holders.
Yeah.
It actually expired, and we renewed it for another 10 years.
Yeah, kept
And
renewing
We
them.
kept on renewing them, and then the 10 years was expiring in 2018.
Yes.
2018,
2018.
it was expiring. So we had a choice of either renewing or apply for citizenship. And at that time, as many of you can recall, there was so much talk about immigration, and the rules were changing by the minute. We got scared. We got scared that we've been living in this country for so long.
And we have children that live in this country that this is their home, so.
Yeah.
They've never known any other
Anything
place.
else. Yeah.
Anything else. And we've had stories of parents who have been deported, even though they had children who were citizens here. And we were so fearful, we couldn't just imagine being deported and leaving our kids here.
Right.
So we went ahead and started the application for citizenship.
So you had the hope of the Dreamers Act at one point, and then that was basically kind of taken, when they hit 18, talk a little bit about that, because you have, how many children total?
So we have
Six.
Six?
But
Okay.
fortunately, they were all born in this country.
So since they were born here?
Yeah.
They were citizens.
They were
yeah,
citizens,
They were
okay.
citizens, yes, yes. But yeah, the Dreamers, it's like when parents bring their young children.
Right.
And at that time.
Mhm.
they
So we
just-
won't go down that one,
Right, right.
but that would have made things even
Yeah.
that much more scary.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we had friends that were in that type of situation, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So talk about your application for citizenship and,
So Ted and I, we both applied for the citizenship, and you know, we were confident. I think things would go well. So we did apply for citizenship. The whole process took about a year to just go through the whole process. And of course, as that process was happening, we were kind of living on edge because we didn't know if I get into some trouble or get a speeding ticket, we didn't know what would happen. So we were really kind of sitting on edge for that whole year. Anyway, the last step was to go and get an interview with the immigration officers. So my wife and I, we drove to Detroit. The appointment was on the same day. No, different days.
They were on different days.
Different days. So I went
You
first.
yes.
I went first, and we did the interview, and they gave me the runaround about some taxes. We had to show that proof that we had paid taxes and all that information. So we had to follow up with some more information, which I did, and then whilst we were waiting for the results, she had
I
an
had
appointment.
I had my interview.
Your interview as well.
Right, as well, so I went down for my interview, so.
So finally, I got the news that, after waiting for a while, I got the news that I got my citizenship and I need to travel to Grand Rapids to take the oath. So at that same time,
And that was an exciting time, so, but I got mine, I had to wait to hear from them, because he had the citizenship before I even got to hear from them. And so, and then finally got to hear from them, and I was denied. So,
which was very
and this
surprising.
was 2018?
2019.
2019.
2019.
Yeah.
2019 at that time, and my green card, like you said, it was expiring, so, and getting denied and my green card expiring, it was worrisome, so.
Yeah.
yeah.
Did they give a specific reason, or just you're denied?
I don't remember what was in the letter, but they said that we could petition. So we did just that. Through the lawyer, we petitioned, and that took another year to get through that whole process.
Yeah.
And then finally, I had a second interview with another officer, and he explained that, sometimes people just give, the way they share their stories, and it's different officers, some people share the stories more, powerful, I guess, and so they sell their story more than than other people, and so the officers will approve it. So basically, that's what he said, that he was able to sell his story more efficiently than I did. So,
But I also think I heard Farai say the attitude of some immigration officers
Right.
interviewing you can affect the outcome too. That some are
Yes, yes.
not
So-
as in favor of immigration, that you may be more likely to get declined.
Yes.
So there's some bias,
Yes.
which
Because-
is just, I think we all need to remember, bias is just inherent. It's not something we do intentionally, but it, a
Yeah,
lot of
it
other
was-
factors in another whole conversation
Right.
sometimes.
Go ahead.
and I think it was just his way of saying, yeah, you met two different people with two different beliefs, and they,
Yeah.
that's the way you sell your story.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because there was nothing
That's what he
wrong,
said.
there was nothing wrong really with our paperwork. We used the exact same set of paperwork.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like there was some hole somewhere. Actually, as a matter of fact, I think I got more speeding tickets in my history than she has.
Yeah.
So if somebody else to be denied, it was me. But it didn't work that way.
Yeah.
So to change just a bit, to kind of wrap up my curiosity and probably that of the congregation, you both now are full citizens.
Yes.
We like to think of ourselves as a Christian nation.
Yes.
And I'm curious how you feel we do it, that both as a nation, but also as a denomination and congregation. You found your way here. And I'm curious how you felt treated over the years by the community, your workplaces, those kinds of things.
That's a loaded question.
Well, I know in my early years, when I was in school, being brand new with an accent and, just saying something and, the accent comes out, and we were at this tender age at that time, and just, people making fun of that. So at that time, that was, that kind of hit my self-esteem a bit, so,
Yeah.
yeah. And then,
People making Tarzan's jokes.
yeah.
Oh,
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But,
Yeah, no, it's different. I mean, I think as a nation and as a congregation, I'll speak on the nation first. I think as an immigrant, you're more sensitive to your surroundings because we meet all kinds of different people. Some people who embrace immigrants, some people who do not embrace immigrants. And so you are very much aware of that. You're very much aware of your surroundings. And sometimes you have to think first before you say something because you don't know who's around you. So it's different. It's different. So it brings a lot of sensitivity. But I have to say that when we found this church, one of the things which drove us to this church, I think, was the mission work. This church has been very strong in doing mission work. And that was something that we were very passionate about. And to be honest with you, I think this whole congregation, we feel the love. We really do feel the love.
yeah, we feel at home.
We feel at home.
We feel
So-
at home at this church, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
so you feel like we're treating people the way God would want us to,
Yes.
whether it's serving our neighbors
Yes.
or welcoming people in whose life journey has been different than most of ours.
Yes. Not only that, you remember we have supported Arnold Mission 10,000 miles away. A village, a remote village in Africa. This church has done enormous amount of work. That's another proof to show that this church embraces everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the church might have done something like that anyway at some
Yes.
point, but your experience and your familiarity with the community and your story probably helped.
Yes.
Let's do something in Arnoldine.
And Arnold.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So any last thoughts or pieces of the journey you want to share before we?
I'll let him do the closing.
You know, I feel that we're in very difficult times right now, at many levels. I feel like we're really living in a world, in a nation where we're very divided in what we believe in and what we think. I think what I always strive for is people to embrace one another as children of God.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing we need to focus on. We might have different beliefs, but we're all children of God.
Oh, yeah.
We are all people. We are all humans.
Yeah.
So,
And we need to be treated with love.
yes.
Well, Fry, Tendy, thank you so much for taking this time with me, and I just
you.
appreciate your presence and leadership and participation in the congregation.
No, thank you.
It brings, I've missed seeing you in the third row on the north side
Yes.
these last months, and hopefully that'll change sometime soon. But I want to thank you on behalf of the whole congregation, not just myself, for
Yeah.
taking this time to share some of your story with us.
Well,
So,
thank you for
Thank you.
giving us the opportunity.
Yeah, you're
Yes,
welcome.
thank-
So, again, my thanks to Farai and Tendi for, at least for me, was an illuminating conversation, and so much that so many of us born in this nation take for granted, that other people really have to struggle for. So I just challenge us to think about our attitudes towards immigrants and what it is Jesus is calling us to as a people of faith who seek to follow in his footsteps.